BV and Jellified, Jimmy Bean and Bly, reaching highest where we reach, yo, it's highest to the stars. Beats in the villain Jeep, vibrating other cars. Whose world is this? Yo, we say the world is ours. So we grow beards, no fear, photos so clear. Take another shot, so to speak, yeah, more beer. BV worldwide, put a fist to the sky. Cheers, cheers, New Year's, dope rhyme, good vibes. My crew speaks power, Chi-Town bleeds power. Knowledge, wisdom, and truth in the final hour. Respect, loyalty, family, charity speaks power. Bearded Villains brotherhood speaks honor. Forwards and onwards, stay villain to the end. I will never shave again because my beard is not a trend. I represent excellence, leadership, and never follow. I'm a BBC member, yo, lieutenant of Chicago.
One brotherhood, one ship. Stay bearded, stay villain. One brotherhood, one ship. Stay bearded, stay villain. It's BV, 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 it's BV. Yo, all I see.
Hey, everybody, welcome to the Heart of a Villain, episode 58. Thank you guys so much for tuning in live on the YouTube, or if you're listening back on the playback at simplecast.com or any one of, dozens and dozens of podcast platforms. Guys, happy Friday night, and thanks again for tuning in. This is The Heart of a Villain, the podcast devoted to the Bearded Villains Worldwide Brotherhood and the lives they are changing all over the world. This is gonna be a good one. I say that often, but this one's going to be special. And not to take anything away from other interviews that we've had, not to take anything away from previous podcast episodes. We all have, everybody, gets something different out of each one of these episodes, myself included. But this one, I think every single person that listens to this episode is going to pull something amazing out of the story and the words that come out of our guest tonight. Skip is an amazing brother who's doing some really incredible things with his life. And we're going to get into it really quickly tonight because it is a long episode tonight. But I'm just excited to have him in here. Well, not live because, we record the interviews previously. So no, I'm not pulling the wool over your eyes or anything like that. Those of you who have watched this before and are familiar with the format, we do that so that we can, it was always started as a podcast first. So I want to make sure that we get a good recording of the interviews and we don't have any of the technical glitches within the interview itself, which we might get from doing a live stream interview. So we bring it in that way. But I digress. You guys are so awesome for being here. I appreciate it. I do want to say hi to the people that are here live right now over on the YouTube that are tuning in and commenting. Charissa's in the house. Where Charissa is, we know Jay is in the house too. Doug, how you doing, buddy? Jay, Mark in the house. We're missing a few of our regulars, but I think they're coming in shortly. We think so anyway. I'm not sure who else is here that is not commenting, and that's all fine and well too. If you don't want to comment, that's great. Just sit back and relax and enjoy. Guys, if you're into Bearded Villains, if you're into guys doing good in the world, guys making a difference in the world, this is the podcast for you, because every week we bring to you stories about some of our brothers from around the world just doing really good things. Good guys doing good things in brotherhood, family, honor, charity, all the good stuff, guys. Okay, I told you I wanted to get into it early, so hopefully you've gotten your popcorn, your drinks, your bathroom breaks out of the way, and you're ready to go. This brother here is a brother from Bearded Villains, Louisiana, and former captain who is now fulfilling a life dream of his. And just, I can't say enough about how inspiring his story is, but he'd be the first to tell you it's not about that. One of the favorite things that I pulled out of what he talked about was that you need to pay attention to the walk. And I was, that's all I can say, guys. I can't really say a whole lot else, other than just to bring in my interview guest in my interview. Stay with us, guys. This, what's funny is that when I got done with the interview, Skip said to me, go ahead and edit that down however you need to. I said, I don't, I don't think I can edit that down. There's so much in there. There's so much goodness, so many good words, great stories, and it's not all happy. His story is not all happy, but it's so inspiring in the way that it's humanity. It's a human story, and the way that he has come about and changed his life, and is being an amazing example of what a bearded villain is. You can't say anything more. So I'm going to bring this interview in, guys. I'm going to be live in the comments as we go. Feel free to comment. And here's my interview with Skip, guys. My guest today is a bearded villain brother who's been around for a while from Louisiana. He's a former captain, but man, outside of being a former captain of Louisiana, this guy has one of the most inspirational and amazing stories anywhere in BV land, I think, from what I've known. A real solid brother. Please help me welcome Hick, Cheramie, or as well as everybody knows him, Skip. Buddy, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Thanks for having me, man.
Oh man, I'm so glad I was finally able to get you on here. This has been something for probably at least 20 episodes. Since I really started delving into brothers that are inspirational, and I've been wanting to schedule this with you, and I've actually been reached out to by several people saying you need to reach out to Skip. Skip's got a story, and we want to hear from him. We want to hear from him. So I'm really glad that we were finally able to do this.
I'm humbled and honored that I'm a guest. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Absolutely, man. People don't. A lot of times, people don't recognize or realize where we come from before bearded villains, and those of the listeners here that know you as a bearded villain, they may not know your story. So I wonder if for a little bit you can just kind of step back for a second and tell us, what your journey was in life that brought you to where you are right now.
Yeah, sure. Most of the guys in the club, know that I'm a Bayou boy. I'm a Cajun from South Louisiana. I had a pretty normal childhood up to a certain extent, and came from a broken home, and I don't like to tell too many war stories, but a lot of drug addiction and alcohol abuse in that home and in my family, and years later, it's what I had turned into. Um, I'll skip a lot of the childhood, uh, but coming up as a young adult, um, I had always felt kind of different from my peers, and I'm sure that had to do a lot to do with the actual childhood part. I was just a young adult, and I was very lost as to in what direction I was going. Um, Started abusing alcohol at a young age. I think the first time I drank, I was like in the fifth grade. I was at a Mardi Gras parade, and I had parents handing out like jungle juice and stuff, and I think I ended up grabbing a cup and drinking it, and I really liked the way it made me feel. And when I look back on that, being like in the fifth grade, having a drink is kind of ludicrous when you think about it, but it gave me this feeling of ease and comfort, of something that I had never experienced before, where I actually had felt what I thought was like normal in my own skin. And that progressed through the years as into my teen years, the drinking and starting off with different drugs and experimenting, kind of like most high school kids experiment. I don't know what it's like these days, but back in the day it was something that a lot of kids experimented with different socially with different narcotics, rather be marijuana or whatever. Um, but when I got into my early adult years, I found it as a coping mechanism. If I didn't like the way I felt, then I needed something mood altering. So at a young age, I was introduced to an easier way out, and it being, obviously a chemical in some sort. Um, you know, I in high school, I did the normal thing, and then, I went off to college, and that's when my partying kind of, increased. And everyone has these stories, and I don't like to go too big into them, and how the drug use escalated, but it did escalate, and it escalated to things, hard drugs, intravenous drugs, and a bad opioid addiction. And but you always hear the gateway drug is marijuana, or the gateway drug is this. And I truly believe that the gateway drug is trauma. I can really look back now with a clear mind after 24 plus years of substance abuse, that um, when I was in that childhood period, there was a lot of things that happened. My mom abandoned me when I was a young boy. My brother and I, and my father raised us. So there's a lot of things that accumulated to where I felt like I needed to escape with these chemicals. So I went off into college, and I totally messed that up. I went off into the military, picked up a really bad drinking habit, got out, and started to live out in the civilian world. And it was tough. I didn't grow, I should say, responsibly, like most young adults grow. I had a lot of character defects. I think the biggest one is not loving myself, and I'll get to that later, how important that is to us as human beings. So in that process of 24 years, I've caused a lot of damage, um, a very large and wide path of destruction. And it wasn't until 2014 that I had, everyone talks about this rock bottom, and we've all experienced these different rock bottoms, right? Your rock bottom may be different from my rock bottom. And I think it has a lot to do with where we come from and what we are taught, and the environment that we grow up in. We look at ourselves, and when I speak of ourselves, or us, I speak of the drug addict and alcoholic, because that's something that I'm always going to be. We lack a lot of awareness, we lack a lot of confidence, we lack a lot of self-esteem. There were things maybe done in our past that those things were removed from us, or we never really grasped that. And I spoke on self-love. um, Going back as a child, I don't know if I missed that in a class, if I missed that day of school, or if I missed, in catechism. I did grow up Catholic, uh, but I didn't know how to love myself. Could it have been of lack of love towards me? I'll never get down to the root of that, but I didn't love myself. So when you tend not to love yourself as a person, you tend not to treat yourself well, and you tend to listen to those thoughts. So your worth and value is obviously decreased, and you'll basically put anything in your body not to feel. So this drug and this alcohol thing's a very tricky thing. You start off with this really cool feeling of ease and comfort, right? And that feeling is chased, um, for a long stretch of time. For me, it was 24 years that I chased something that I was never ever gonna catch. Right? Any time that I had a bad day, I was taking a drink. Something good happened, I was taking a drink. A steak that I cooked may have come out well done, and I wanted it rare or mid rare, because I was too drunk and I didn't pay attention to what was going on, and I was pissed off, so I was having another drink. So I would justify every drink. Every drink was completely justifiable in my mind.
Yeah.
Obviously not anyone who was watching the destruction unfold It wasn't justifiable, So, I don't, like I said, I don't go back too much into what it was like before I drink. I can give you a quick, before I quit drinking, I can give you a quick description.
Yeah.
I was a crappy human being. I was not a reliable human being. I wasn't a human being who was even able to give love or compassion because I myself didn't understand what love and compassion was. I was very self-destructive, and I was a thief. And when people, you say thief, a lot of people was like, oh, well, you stole a lot of stuff. Well, yeah, I did. Not just monetary or materialistic things. I stole a lot of nights of sleep from my father. I stole a lot of, you know, a lot of people seen a lot of potential in me, and I stole their thoughts. And so there was, and that's what I was a thief of many nights of sleep, and I was a thief of trust, and I was a thief of love, or whatever I can do to excel my drug addiction and my alcoholism, I did. And it didn't matter who was in my way. There was no second thoughts about it. And people would tell me what I was all the time. One of the biggest things for people who don't understand addiction is they'll tell you, well, you're a drug addict or you're an alcoholic. Look at you. And they're all about telling you what you are. And that's fine because that's what they see. Could you blame them?
Right.
But we know what we are. I knew exactly what I was when I would wake up in the morning. If I could bear to look myself in the mirror, I knew exactly what I was looking at. And it's a very painful thing, because when you're looking in this mirror, it's hard to look at yourself because you know exactly the thief you are. You know exactly how selfish you are. You know exactly how much, destruction you're causing. And people have this thing where they want to tell you, we know what we are. Trust me. You talk to any active alcoholic or drug addict right now, I know guys in the brotherhood who drink heavy, some borderline problems, some not. It's not for me to figure out. You know, we don't know when that happens for us. If your life is manageable, then you're doing okay. Obviously, my life was not manageable. There was nothing manageable about my life, and people will say that and you'll hear it. Well, it's hard being an alcoholic and a drug addict. No, 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 no. Loving a drug addict and alcoholic is the hardest thing.
Wow.
And I had to sit back and watch that. I had to sit back and watch people love me and me reject that love and hurt them in the process. In return, they had to watch me literally destroy myself. They were watching me actually disintegrate before their eyes. So when you get to that point, you just don't care. You don't care about who you love. You don't care who you're hurting. You know, what I do like to talk about is the solution that came to be in my alcoholism. You know, I could tell you all day long how drunk I got. I could tell you all day long how it happened. I think everyone that's going to be listening to this knows how to get drunk. Everyone who's listening to this knows how to get high. So those are they're not as important as how did I come to terms with living life on life's terms every day without a drink or a drug. And that's the important part. And it started December of 15th of 2014. That was a time in my life where I was sleeping on a park bench, you know, as a heroin addict. And this was back in the early 2000s. And I continued that drug use all the way in 2011. And I stopped doing drugs and I became a heavy drinker because it helped me. It was more of like a substitution actually for it, for my addiction. And on December 15th, 2014, it was on a Monday morning, and I called into work sick. At that time, I was drinking close to a gallon of vodka a day. My pancreas was failing. I was in and out of the hospital for years prior to that. They told me I was going to die. Uh, I didn't care. I'd accepted that, I'm an alcoholic and this is who I am. And I'm in South Louisiana. So it's very sociably acceptable. I'm not going down some alley and score dope. I can walk into a store and buy it. And I was literally drinking myself to death. And that morning, I called into work sick, and I was sitting in our garage at 8 in the morning drinking vodka alone. Because towards the end of my professional drinking career, I drank alone because nobody can tolerate drinking with me, and I don't blame them because now I'm around people who do get belligerently drunk, and it's very hard. So God bless them for tolerating me for as long as they did. But I was sitting there that morning, and I thought about all these rock bottoms that I had. I thought of what it was like to be to be homeless. I thought about what it was like to be eating out of dumpsters. I thought it was, what it was like to be sleeping in the cold on a park bench. And right then and there, in that moment when I had a place to live, I had a job. I had what I thought was healthy relationships, but as alcoholic, we lie to ourselves. We tell ourselves that everything's okay. I mean, we lie to ourselves so much. Every day is a lie. We lie to everyone around us, even though they know that we're lying. We still believe that lie. And right then and there, in that moment, was the loneliest I'd ever felt in my life, and it's still a phenomenon to this day. And what happened that day, but I remember walking in the house. I remember it being right before Christmas, and I remember presents being wrapped up for the children. And I sat on that sofa that we had in our living area, and I cried. I just I cried. I couldn't stop crying. And even in that moment of being completely intoxicated, I did have some clarity of that I need help. And I had been knowing I needed help. The day our lives become unmanageable and we actually see the damage we cause, we know what we are and we know that we need help. But pride and ego play such a huge role in us ever getting that help that we actually need. And I sat there and I contemplated a lot of things in my life and what was going on. And I knew that for 24 years that this is what I was. And I had, before I had no hope whatsoever. And for some reason in that moment, I had this little speck of hope. And I can still remember how small it was. It was so tiny. Um, I kind of choke up because it was a very emotional moment in my life. And I was sitting there and I never was a religious person, and um, I had a very, very bargaining relationship with who I called God at the time. It was, you get me out of this, I'm gonna do this, and get me out of that and do that, and it was never like, what can I do for you, or what can I do to be a better human, or um, and even in that moment of that small moment of clarity, that alcoholic behavior was still there because I was sitting there and I was thinking, I'm like, you know, I can't go get help now. I can't go get help now. It's like Christmas is like a week away. I got my kids coming and I have this going on and that going on and like look their presents and and I'm sitting here in delusion, completely delusional, that everything was going to be okay because, I admitted that I had a problem right there and I said, I'm going to get help, but I'm not getting help now, right? I'm not taking action. So I'm talking myself into believing that, let me get through Christmas, let me get through. And, you know, I, I there I was, trying to even in the almost moment of clarity, I was still that alcoholic behavior. I was trying to talk myself out of it. And shortly after that, you know, bargaining with myself, I started kind of bargaining with, the big man upstairs, and I was crying, man. I dropped to my knees and I was crying, and I just felt like this complete. It was the most amazing feeling, and it's still unexplainable to this day. Some people could say like, well, I guess you were just tired, or I guess he he put his hands on you, or and it wasn't no burning bush or lightning bolt, or these stories you hear of these great moments where the light comes down and shines on you. But in that moment, I think I was the most hopeless and broken that I had ever been in my life. And I dropped to my knees, and I probably did the first most important thing is I said, you know what, do what you want with me. And little did I know in that moment that I had completely surrendered to whatever you believe in or anyone believes in up there. I don't, if it works for you, it works for you. Then shortly after that, you know, I kind of went back a little bit, and I'm like, well, I'm gonna do something after Christmas, and I still can't explain it to this day, but and when I tell this story, I don't want people to think that it was an actual voice that talked to me, but something in my conscience was like, you're not gonna be here next Christmas, bro. Like, your kids won't have presents to open. You're gonna drink yourself to death. And that like hit me really, really hard, and I still can't explain that moment. Shortly after that, I picked up the telephone and I said the three most important words I've ever said in my life is I need help. And from that moment on, things started to happen, and I got to where I needed to be properly taken care of and properly counseled. And I was obviously I was a heavy drinker, so I had to be medically detoxed off of alcohol because my body would have shut down in seizures and stuff if I would just quit cold turkey drinking. And I spent Christmas and New Year's Eve in 36 days. Now, I had been to treatment before countless times, never worked. Been to countless detoxes, never worked. It was something different this time. This time I wanted to change. And what I've come to realize is that if you don't want it, you can't make anybody do it. I'm going to be 6 years sober next month. I've worked with countless drug addicts and alcoholics, and they have to want it more than. And I tell them this: I was like, you have to want this more than anything in the world. You have to want this more than anything there is, and that is so true, because I had to want that more than anything, and I had to do it not for you know the fiance at the time. I couldn't do it for my children. Like, I had to do this for me, and it was tough because it was the first time I went into treatment and I shut myself off from the world. I didn't talk to my babies, who I think were like 9 and 7 at the time. I took that whole time to like work on me, and to this day I'm so glad I did, because when I walked out the doors of that treatment center, I knew that my journey was just beginning. I knew that I had to come out into the real world. I knew that I had to live life on life's terms. And I knew I had to do all of this. I had to repair all this damage. I had to repair all these relationships. I had to be a faithful and hardworking employee. And I had to be all these things for 24 years that I never was. So I was really being like reborn. I was learning how to feel again. I felt feelings in my late 30s and early 40s that the last time I felt them, I was a child, you know. So I had to learn how to live all over again, and I had to do all of this without this.
Mm.
So it's a very scary thing, and I had a very healthy fear when I was walking out those doors of treatment, because I knew in treatment I was protected. I knew I was okay, but I knew the work was about to start, real work. I found out what I was in treatment. I found out, who I hurt and what I was. But now the real work would begin, which was the long term, process of staying in sobriety. And I was pretty lucky. I had a great support system, and I still do to this day. And I came out of there. In 6 years, I've managed to reestablish myself. In 6 years, I've managed to, uh, reestablish relationships. A lot of people that I've done wrong were were very forgiving. Were very forgiving, and I was truly lucky that they were. And in that process, it's taught me how to forgive and be a better human being. Um, so coming out of there and having to build everything all over again was quite difficult. But I look back at where I am now and where I was when I walked out them doors, and I think I did. I think I did pretty well. Um, when we get to the bearded villain part, I'll let you know how big of a role that played in my recovery, because it played a huge role in my recovery. Bearded villains.
Yeah. Well, if you can, just I want to just touch on a couple things that you just spoke on, because wow, there was a lot to unpack there, and it's obvious that you've spoken on this many times before from your heart, and that much is so obvious that this is something that you live every day, and you have a pride in talking about it, as even as emotional as it is, because of all you've come through. But one of the things that strikes me and that I really love about what you talked about is that you had to learn how to forgive, but I'm guessing that probably the first person you had to learn had to learn to forgive was yourself,
Yeah.
right? What Talk for a second about that, because I know that you've also mentioned that you had to learn to love yourself. Um,
Yeah.
can you
Yeah.
can you
So
talk about that just a second?
yeah, I can. So I'll touch a bit on the forgiveness part. Being not able to forgive yourself for things that you've done uh, is almost cancerous. It's and it'll manifest into such great things in your soul. What I believe in your soul. So obviously those years that I was drinking and drugging, I didn't know what forgiveness was, because each time that I did that to myself was because I didn't know how to forgive myself. It's like the snowball effect. You do something wrong and you just keep punishing yourself, and you punish yourself, and you punish yourself, and you punish yourself. Um, for me, with forgiveness was, when I walked out of treatment, I hadn't forgiven myself for anything. And, there was some things that I had to work on me. Um, to touch back on what I said about the forgiveness thing, as people forgave me, it's like each person that I would run into, and you know, I had these amends to make, right? I had these amends to make. I had to fix these things, uh, you know, because it's the right thing to do, and it's me taking accountability for what I did. I'd get these small like doses of forgiveness from people, and in doing that, each little dose, each time I was forgiven, I had a greater understanding of forgiving myself. When we screw up, and it don't even have to be as bad as I did, in my life, the things that I've done in my life, we take that hard as a human being. We tend to punish ourselves. With that comes a lot of these things, a lot of self-esteem, our self-esteem dropping and stuff, this and that. I think for me, the ultimate form of self-forgiveness was, I can't go back and change what I've done. I'll never be able to go back and change those moments, but I can change who I am today with the people who are in those moments. Um, I don't know how broad this show is, but this is who I am, and this is what I'm going to speak about.
Mhm.
I grew up Catholic, right? I'm more of a spiritual person now, but I do believe in God.
Mhm.
And I had this very simple, uh, thing told to me by a program I was in. It's, you know, what is your concept of God? And that's all I really had to believe. I just had to believe in something greater than myself,
Yeah.
because it was always about me, right? It was me, 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 me. Everything I did was about me, me, me. So once I had that understanding of believing, I think sometimes we got to get beat down too to believe in something greater than ourselves. Once I had that understanding of that there is something greater than myself, and it's my higher power, and it's who I get to choose to call God. And that was a personal relationship that I had to build and ask for forgiveness
Mm.
from who I choose to call
Yeah.
God. I'm about whatever works for anyone. If you're leading a healthy, happy life and you're a compassionate, loving human being, if that's working for you and you don't dictate other people's religions or other people's practices, then do what you got to do. I'm all about it. I'll go into any church or whatever. I'll talk to anybody from any different religion. Sook, if you're watching, Sook's atheist. Sook and I get along great. I'm a very spiritual guy. I believe in God. He doesn't. Let me tell you, Suk and I have had the best conversations that I've ever had when it came to religion and spirituality.
Mhm.
So every to each in their own. But I had to get forgiveness from there first. And once I was shown that grace and mercy, and to physically experience people forgiving me, because that's the way I was taught how to forgive myself. Uh, you know, it's cool for my mind to say that he forgives me, right? And it's cool for my heart to accept that. But to actually physically have human beings that you've hurt so bad, that you've destroyed so much of their trust and love for you, to physically and vocally tell you that they forgive you, trust me. Each person that tells you that, you start to forgive yourself a little bit more because you see the love and compassion that these people around you have,
Yeah.
and how truly important you are to them. So that's my whole thing on forgiveness. It's about every night before I go to sleep, I take a real good personal inventory about what kind of person I was on that day, and I see where was wrong, and I take accountability where I was wrong, and what can I do tomorrow to make it better, and what can I do tomorrow to be better. So self-forgiving is an ongoing thing, because we are not perfect and we do mess up. So it's always going to be a form of growth for me, and I think it's always going to be forgiveness at certain levels, and I think that's a real personal journey for an individual. There's no magic bean or equation that I can draw up for anybody watching this. That is an inner, personal journey.
Mhm.
Same with self-love. If you are told your whole life, or you never told your whole life, that you are of worth and value, then I don't think that we can really comprehend what self love is. Because if we weren't loved properly, then we really don't know what love is. We may think we know what love is. And, that was something that I learned too. I learned that I was of worth and value. I learned from people around me through forgiveness that I was of worth and value. So when you start seeing what other people see, and it's crazy because there's a lot of people who seen potential in me and seen things in me that I didn't see in myself. This I was blind to it. As far as I was concerned, you might have to bleep this out, but I was the biggest piece of shit on earth. And I lived like that for 24 years, waking up every day like, I accept it. This is what I am. I'm a big piece of crap, and this is what I am. Excuse me. But so when you have people that start to see your worth, you start to believe them, right? Then you start to see that you are of worth and value, and you kind of just love yourself a little more. Each time, you do something good, each time, one of the big things, VP, is that when we act of service to others, and I'm sure you and many of the guys that are listening to this can relate to this, when we show love and compassion, when we do something kind, you know, the act of love is being performed.
Mhm.
Rather it be dropping off a bag of canned goods at a food bank, or rather, it be a coat drive. The guys do a lot of coat drives, and the Chicago boys are good for that. We have just such a great, um, group of charity, brothers in this gigantic club. And so each time that we do something kind for another human being, we are teaching ourselves how to love in the act of kindness.
Yeah.
And that's how I've taught myself. But look, man, I'm a busy guy, and you call me up, or you hit me up, and you tell me you're having a problem with alcohol. I got to stop what I'm doing, and I got to pay attention to what this person's saying, because not everybody has the opportunity to where someone wants to listen. And by doing that, I'm staying out of myself. By doing that, I am performing an act of kindness, something that they may not be getting somewhere else. To keep this thing that I have, I got to give it away. And it's about, we really learn to love ourselves when we are practicing love and compassion. Because the more we do that, the more we see of the impact that we do have on people, and the more that we see how love affects people and how love can affect us.
Yeah. I it's so easy to listen to you talk about it, and because I think you have so much good advice on this, and I really liked, when you talked about when somebody calls you up, you got to be there. And I think there's a hidden part of it too, that I think we need, that we can be there for each other, as brothers that are listening out there. And it's something that you do for anybody that's reaching out for addiction. But, if somebody's taken the time to reach out to you, you don't know how much strength it took for them to do just that. And so that little effort, I think, for us to take a step back from our own lives for a second and make them the focus of what needs to be done. I think that's a perfect example of, passing things on like you're talking about, taking a step back and recognizing that this may have taken a humongous effort on somebody else's part to make that phone call to you. And whether this is the 30th time they've reached out or the first time, it may be the one time that makes all the difference in the world. And they may just need to hear the words that are coming out of your mouth, or just an ear to have listened to them. And I think
Yeah.
that's such a great statement from you.
Yeah. I know how hard it is to make that phone call. I really know how hard it is to make that phone call. And it takes a lot of dropping pride and ego. And, you know, but, I will be honest. You talked about somebody calling you up 30 times. Uh, I can only help someone so much, and that's really hard, because if a person is not taking action, when it all boils down to it, it's our decision.
Mm.
It's our decision. We can sit there and call someone and talk about doing things all day long, right? We could do that all day long, but it's about taking action, and you have to take that action. I can admit all I want that I'm a drug addict and alcoholic, but what am I gonna do about it? And I've given people plenty of resources, treatment centers, and it's tough, man, because the recovery world is a very tough world. You have to have really thick skin, and you have to set really healthy boundaries, because say there's a guy named Joe, he calls me up 2 in the morning. Man, I'm drunk. I don't know what to do. I get, all right. Well, this is what you're gonna do. You're gonna sober up, and we're gonna talk when you're sober, because you can't talk nobody that's drunk into getting help. And there's a lot of things going on when a person's intoxicated. You gotta be very careful what you say to them.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the times, they'll hit me up when they obviously having tremors, and they need alcohol, and then that's when we'll talk. Don't get me wrong. Joe calls me that first time, I'm talking to him. Joe calls me that second time, I'm talking to him. Joe quits drinking, and he's kind of like on and off. He drinks sometimes, he don't. I'll tell him, don't call me when you're drinking. Don't call me when you're drinking. You know, when you're in the programs that I'm in, you have to be really tough, because trust me, I choose Alcoholics Anonymous. I believe in anything that works for you. I've had some old sponsors who were very hard on my ass. I better not call them at 2:30 in the morning drinking. If I did, they were going to show up at my house. They were going to let me pass out. They were going to show up at my house at 5:30 in the morning with coffee and make me start drinking coffee. And then we were going to start working, the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. So yes, it's very important you do pick up that phone, and it's very important that you talk. What you need to do is make sure that person takes action, that they do get the help that they need. Um, you know, there's a lot of people out there struggling with addiction. There's a lot of people struggling with alcoholism. The chairs in those rooms are very valuable. The beds in those treatment centers are very valuable. And it's a tough call because human life is very valuable.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've done interventions, man, where these families were broken. They didn't know what to do. They don't know what to do. I mean, you know, it's the end of their at the end of their rope. There's nothing they have left to give. And when it comes time to offering this person help, and look, it's there for them. They can go and they can get it, but they're not ready.
Mm.
Their family may be ready, but they're not ready. And one of the hardest things that I ever have to do is people come to me and they're like, what do we do now? Like I
Yeah.
got some kind of magical answer. And I'm like, if you believe in a God, pray. Pray that they make it out of this. Pray that they see that, you know, they need the help that they need, that they hit their rock bottom, and hopefully, you know, they wake up from it and they don't die. It's a very cruel, tough world, drug and alcohol addiction. And it's a world where you have to have thick skin, and you got to be very stern at points with they what I was like. I know what they are, you know. They they me,
Yeah.
and trust me, I would get over on you, you know. So you got to be very aware, and you got to remember, for the guys out there who want to help, who want to help the brother that calls, and who wants to help the brother that you know, he doesn't know what to do. He's at his rock bottom, and he has talk to him, and help him figure out how to get help. What I want y'all to individually understand is the ones that are out there helping is remember your health. Remember that you only can help so much. Remember that once you give them those resources, you can help them along the way. But if they're not willing to want it more than anything in the world, remember that you have no control over that. I know a lot of guys who struggle with alcoholism, especially in the brotherhood. And I've had brothers reach out to me and they're like, he's not listening. Like, what do we do? Like, this is his third time he does this at a meet, or this is his third time he with it. There's not really much you can do at that point. You know, you can talk to them when they sober, kind of really hope that they take a grasp that they do have a problem, they are accountable for it, and do something about it. Or like we've seen a lot of brothers just not be able to stay in the club, and it's tragic, man. It breaks my heart to see a brother leave or get removed from this club because of an addiction, because every resource is available to them through this brotherhood.
Mm.
If you know, I don't want to get too big on Bearded Villains until we really start talking about Bearded Villains, but if this world was like Bearded Villains, this world would be a better place. You know, I've never seen a group of men which that came from so many different parts of life and cultures that all have this common love and compassion thing, you know, this common core thing of this real brotherly love. So if you're an alcoholic or a drug addict out there and you are in this brotherhood and you're not using this brotherhood to get the resources for you to become a better person, and I'll touch on that a little bit, then shame on you. Shame on you for taking a spot in this club and not actually using the resources that are available for you. Because I promise you, anywhere you turn in this club now, there's somebody in recovery. There is.
Mhm.
When I got in, man, this was a taboo thing. We talking about beginning of 2016. We talking about, you know, it was kind of weird me coming into this thing in sobriety because I was like a year and a half sober when I came into this club. Not even. And, you know, it was something you didn't hear a lot. It was a very hush hush thing. It took me and the president years to get together and finally meet in person and discuss it. And that just happened in Los Angeles last year.
Mm.
You know, I've seen chats trying to be formed, which now they do have one. Unfortunately, I'm not a part of it because I can't really commit to that right now. But it's something that warmed my heart when I was, you know, someone reached out to me and said we have this chat and it's on recovery and it's it's in the brotherhood, and that made me really happy. But since I've been in this brotherhood, I've seen a lot of brothers get sober, a lot. It always puts a smile on my face, and it always excites me because you had guys who were scared to death of going to meets. You had guys who were scared to death of going into, because some of our meets are in bars. We have charity events in bars. We have alcohol. There's alcohol in those places, and they were literally still letting alcohol control their life by not going to these events to do good, right? And it's cool now because any meet I go to, I have a brother in recovery, and he's drinking water or Coke or whatever, just like me. Now, is there something wrong if you drink? No, there's nothing wrong if you drink. I have nothing against alcohol. I choose not to drink.
Right.
One is too many and 10,000 ain't enough for me. I have a drink tonight. Probably ruin my plans for like my daughter's wedding in like God knows 10 years from now. If I live that long. So I'm not, by no means I'm saying there's anything wrong with alcohol or but for people whose lives are unmanageable, yes, there's plenty wrong. And for people who it takes their full potential away, plenty wrong. It took my full potential away, and now I'm like really getting to see my full potential, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's very cool to see, man. And it's funny you say that because that's of all places. Even knowing your story and your background, that's where I met you for the first time in person. Was at a bar when we were there for the meet and greet out in LA. But let's roll right into that though. The transition for you. Let's talk about what part Bearded Villains has played when you found Bearded Villains and the journey that it's taken you on and how it's affected your life and what it's done for you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So before I don't share this story too often, and since like a lot of villains are going to be here, and I really want y'all to hear this. So I was, like I said, I was like about a year and a half sober, and I was on my bachelor party. My bachelor party happened to be in a bar. Go figure. And it was a beer competition. First beer competition I've ever been to. So I go to this beer competition, and that was like my big wilding out bachelor party. It was a beer competition, so it's always kind of been a part of me. And I'm at this beer competition, and I start seeing like this bearded villain flag or whatever. And I'm like, what is that? And I obviously wasn't with no club. I was out there with a couple buddies. I had like this little scraggly beard, and I think I came out fourth maybe. And I was out there, and I'm sitting at this table, and this table was like, in other words, one side of it people were lined up on it, and my side people were lined up on it. And I turn around and look, and I see this guy, and I think he's the biggest a-hole in the world. Like, he was so unfriendly looking. And like, I'm in early recovery, so I'm all like on that pink cloud. I'm like, yeah, man, like positive vibes, and everybody should be cool. And like, this guy just stood there, and he was like this. Can anyone guess who I'm talking about? So he's standing there, like, I'm kind of looking at him to get kind of conversation, want to know what Bearded Villains about. Never talked to him once. To this day, he's one of my very best friends, but never talked to him once. And I remember saying to myself, and I was disappointed in myself because I was like, man, this guy's such an asshole. Like, why is he so mad? Like, I remember that just bothering me in that moment. Like, it bothered me. I'm like, man, he's effing up my pink cloud. Like, why am I letting him? So, and I left that night, and I never talked to him or whatever. And after about a week after this competition, I had this bearded villain thing stuck in my head. Mind you, I think I had just got Instagram. It was like in 2015. I didn't like technology, and like my whole life is surrounded by it now. So I seen things about bearded villains. I'd seen a little bit of that competition, and there was a guy who was in the Louisiana chapter. I'm sorry. There was a guy who was in Mississippi. I want to say maybe South Mississippi then. I want to say it was Skeeter. Maybe Skeeter. I reached out to him. He put me in touch with a guy in the Louisiana chapter named Cody, who put me in touch with the biggest a-hole that I thought on earth. Well, you have to talk to this guy, and I'm like, I'm like, I don't want to talk to that guy. And it was funny, man, because like I went look at his Instagram. If anybody hasn't figured it out, I've been talking about Morgan the whole time. And he got in touch with me, and I was pretty transparent with him about who I was and where I came from. And I'll never forget that. Back then I wasn't a hopeful for long when I got patched pretty quick, and I remember our scouting wasn't like it is today, and I've been really blessed to help build that with this chapter, and because that's where but kind of where I got my start and how it affected my life was, so I get into this kind of chapter, right? And I was kind of feeling things out and how people were and so then, you talk about people, you hear people say that, if it wasn't for this one opportunity, I don't think I'd be where I am today. And I get, you're gonna make me cry again because it fucking touches my heart. Um, before I became a villain, I was a drug addict, alcoholic, a felon. I had been in a lot of trouble, and I'll never forget this. Morgan calls me up and he asks me to be the chapter treasurer, and I'm like, bro, I just want to let you know, like, I'm a felon. He's like, yeah, I know, I was a cop. Like, I know what you are, and he's like, but he's like, you're not like that anymore, and you're a good guy, and I trust you. And man, it's it's kind of dumb when you think about it, but that was a pivotal, life changing like moment for me. Here I was a year and a half sober, and here was this guy who was saying like, "Here's you in charge of all this money for our chapter." And you remember I was talking about earlier that self love,
Yeah.
that act helped me love myself a little bit more and gave me a lot of confidence. So that was the beginning of my bearded villain career. I was the chapter treasurer, and I was a person that was never trusted with that kind of responsibility. And Morgan Tremonti gave me that shot, and he trusted me with that position, and it forever changed my life because from that position I went to being a lieutenant, and I went to being a scout, and I went to being a co-captain, and I went to being a captain, and I've built a lot of bonds in this brotherhood, But that one moment in my life, I look back in my career now and the success that I have, and this life that I'm living now, and I'm so blessed and lucky to live with. And I think back about, yes, my sobriety was important, and yes, these people forgave me for the damage I caused, but I think about Morgan, and I think about how Morgan gave me that one shot, and that one shot changed my life. He gave me real responsibility, and he believed in me, and he trusted me, and he's always believed in me and trusted me. He called me yesterday, and look, man, I'm not as active as I used to be. I'm very, very busy, but I keep track of what's going on, and I make whatever meets I can. And yesterday he called me up to discuss chapter board business, like because I'm on the board, and with members we're gonna have coming into how we do our members coming into so like he still respects like my advice, and he respects my opinion. Um, but when I look back at Bearded Villains, I have a lot of great memories, and I met a lot of wonderful people. But if Morgan would have gave me that one shot, I honestly don't think that I'd be right here talking to you. I honestly don't think that I'd ever be an actor. I honestly don't think that I would ever had the balls and the courage and the confidence to go and achieve the goals that I wanted to achieve. And it it was a beautiful moment and something I won't ever forget him for. He will always be more. He will always be more than a villain to be,
Yeah.
Morgan. So yeah, man, I was blessed enough to hold all these great leadership roles, and coming, going into my year as a captain, we had a great loss in in our chapter with Mike, and that was my first. That was actually my first. The first thing that I had to handle was losing Mike, and I'll share some. I'm gonna share some intimate things with the villains out there, and how we work. The night that I remember I was sitting here in this room, and Morgan called me and broke the news to me, and Morgan said, I don't know what do we do next. Um, and Morgan's a man of plan and action.
Yeah.
Morgan's a man of, but I think Morgan trusted me because, not to say that I'm soft, but that he knew that I was coming into in the position I was coming into, and we had to get together as a unit, and we had to heal really really quick because I had 63 guys who were counting on me, and Danny, who's plays a big part in my life from Miami. Danny's another one who always believed in me, and always spoke straight to me. And I'll never forget Danny's message to me at 5 o'clock that morning. He said, "Heal and don't cry in front of your men."
Mm.
And he said, "Push your chapter forward." And I'll never forget his advice on that. You know, that was a very tough moment for this whole chapter, and we got through it. And I think that we honored Mike. Um, we honored Mike really well with what we've built today, what this chapter has built today. I say, I'm watching a lot of the guys right now doing some great things, and it's kind of cool to sit back and see. Sometimes I pretend like Mike's there with me, and I'm like look what they like, check this out, look what they doing. Some of it he might be like, man, I never thought this would get this far, I never thought this would happen. But what this brotherhood has done for me, this brotherhood has helped me become human again. It's shown me a lot of love and compassion. It's given me faith in humanity again. Um, it's definitely given me the confidence to go out there and achieve my goals. I can honestly sit here today, and I'm pretty vocal about it with our guys, is that I would not be where I am without Bearded Villains. There's no way that I would be where I am without this brotherhood. So that's what I've got from Bearded Villains. I've gotten a life with endless possibilities. I've gotten a support system that, if you look at Bearded Villains as a whole, we have every resource out there in this brotherhood.
Mm.
No matter what you're dealing with or what challenge that you face, rather it be in your personal life or within a chapter, within the club, with charity issues, I've seen this brotherhood come up with so many positive solutions to whatever kind of trials and tribulations that we've gone through individually or as a unit. Um, so I remember thinking about this today. I said, I bet he's gonna ask me what it means to be a villain, because I always get asked that. So, what it means to you to be a villain? So I have a very simple answer for that. What does it mean for me to be a villain? Um, it means just for me to be human, because within this brotherhood, and I said it earlier, and I'll say it again, and I'll tell anyone who asks me, if the world operated like this brotherhood did, with no discrimination against religion, sexuality, culture, and all those things that these sects that's separate us, that I hate this separation, these labels that separate us. uh we don't have that in here in this brotherhood. And if the world was like that, man, let me tell you, I think that we would progress so beautifully and so peacefully. But it's not. It's not. And I think that the numbers we have is growing, and I think that we're making a lot of changes. in this brotherhood worldwide, and you know, we can wave that flag around all day, and we could post all these pretty pictures on IG, and we can participate in a theme, and we can get featured, and we can get a patch, and we can get all this. But let me tell you, to every brother out there, when we have this, and people identify this with who we are as people, it's all about our walk. It's all about our walk. We can say and show and put all the pretty pictures we want and talk about what we've done, but it ultimately boils down to our walk. And that's something I teach my children. That's something that I have to, I choose to do every day is my walk. My walk defines my character. My character defines who I am. And, so I want y'all to remember that the pictures are great. The patches are great. Um, but our walk is ultimately everything. And I think that says a lot about who we are as villains. So always remember your walk.
Bro, man. I I don't even have to, I mean, I'm just sitting here listening away. I'm not even asking questions. You're sending out just bomb after bomb of gold. And this is, this is one of the reasons why I wanted to even have this podcast in the beginning, was because I wanted the villains that are out there that don't hear from people like yourself, that are kind of stuck in a rut, that don't, that need that inspirational kick, kick in the butt. But also the young guys that are coming in, to hear about the stories, to hear about how life-changing it can be. And, man, in just a few minutes there, you've summed up, you've been able to explain so much to the people that are going to be listening to this. So thank you so much for that. That's amazing. That's great.
Yeah, no problem.
So let's get into the happy, the really cool stuff that you've been able to, I mean, this story that you have where you've picked yourself up and you've pushed forward, you've persevered, you've changed your life, and in the course of changing your life, you've changed others' lives. And I know in another interview that you did once before, you talked about um, the moment that you were able to kind of take stock and say, what is it that I want to do? What is it that I want to do with my life that I'm not doing, or that I've always wanted to do? And that took you into acting.
It did.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I get to this point where I became successful with recovery, and I've become successful within family, and I've become successful in you know my relationship, and I had become successful in all these different things in my life. Uh, and as I thought about it, I'm like, what have I, I got sober, and I did this, and then I've excelled in I'd like to think that I've brought a lot of good to Bearded Villains. And those were like just big parts of my life was Bearded Villains, man. This insignia, I lived, breathed, and slept Bearded Villains. A lot of my time was consumed by Bearded Villains, which was good. It was exactly what I needed in my life, and what's cool about it, it's always there. So I had these different things going on, with recovery, with Bearded Villains, and I remember we were sitting down, and my wife turns to me and she asked me if there was anything that I ever wanted to do that drugs and alcohol had like stopped me from doing. And man, I had felt like I'd accomplished so much at that point when she asked me, and this was only in 2018, so 2 years ago. And by no means, when she asked me that question 2 years ago, that I'd have any like inclination that I'd be where I am today. Like not at all. And I kind of dug deep in that moment because I wasn't sure like what I really wanted. And I thought about when I thought about me being a child, and when I was a child, that was something I wanted to do. And you always see that, man. You're like, you know, did you ever accomplish your childhood dream, and did you ever, you know, what you wanted to be as a child growing up? Because I think that's when our minds are most pure and so you know, easy to mold, and mine wasn't the easiest childhood, but wanting to be an actor was a great escape from a lot of the things that I've dealt with in my childhood. And then there was a lot of movies and a lot of just me focusing in on that, and not paying attention to what was going on around me. So when I was asked that question, I turned to her and I was like, I want to be an actor. Now, mind you, I was 40 years old. You know, probably anyone else would have been like, look, just go to work tomorrow. Like, you lost your mind. Like, hey, we got bills to pay and stuff to do. Uh, and she was just like, well, go do it. And I was like, do it. And it was weird because like 2 weeks after that conversation, I got a call to go and be a background homeless person and some like independent horror film. And while I was on that set, because I didn't know nothing about the film industry at all, and I was on that set, and the guy, I didn't know what people did. I didn't know what was what. I was like really fresh to this. I was kind of like just lost looking around, and he films me. And he's like, "Man, you really look good on camera," and uh, which was weird because he was like an older guy, but and he's like, "Yeah, I guess to get some shots of you." And now I know that he's seen something in me like many others that I didn't see in myself at the time. So that led to fast forward about 2 months after that. I get a call. I had submitted some information to a casting agency, and I kind of forgot about it. And I was on my way back from work, and I got a call. And on the phone, it was this woman, and she's like, "This is so and so. I'm looking for Hick Cheramie." Now, a lot of people in Bearded Villain didn't know me as Hick Cheramie.
Right.
Everyone knew me as Skip. And once I became credited in acting, I had a lot of people prefer that the name Hick because it's unique or whatever their business is.
Right.
But and I'm like, and I got kind of scared because only the cops called me Hick, and the government called me Hick. So I was real like, oh yeah, this is him. Like I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, shit, man, did I do something 20 years ago? It's gonna come back to creep up on me. Like, why are they looking for me? Yeah. Like, even though I'm living this good life, like, man, that feeling don't go away sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, what they after me for? And so she's like, I was like, who is this? And she's like, this is so and so from. We'd like to book you on NCIS New Orleans, and you got to come in for a fitting tomorrow. And so I was kind of like stunned. I'm like, okay. And so I went the next day for the fitting. I'm like, oh man, this is really happening. And I go, and the following week I go and I film the episode, and with some background prison apart, and I'm like, I kind of fell in love, man, that night with the process of film. And little did I know how much more I'd fall in love with it. Let's just say that night I was pretty intrigued by it and interested in it. And I remember driving home late in the pouring rain after we filmed that scene at the prison, and I was thinking to myself, I'm like, yeah, that was it. Like that was it. It's, if I even make it on the TV, I may end up on the cutting room floor or whatever. But that was it. That was my one shot. And you know what? It was fun. I loved it. I enjoyed it. And bro, a week later, I get another call and another call and another call, and it's like all these little like background parts, and which I was truly blessed for, man, because I learned so much being a background actor.
Mm-hmm.
And to this day, if I had a spare moment, I would definitely go do background work. It's a lot easier to remember our lines, and the money's not as good, but man, it's fun, and you still get to eat all good food and all. So one thing led to another. It was NCIS New Orleans, and there was Queen of the South, and then there was Claws, and there was just all these little parts. And then in this industry, you have background, which they call extras. Then you have featured, background, and I started to get more of those like featured roles, to where I'm on set more, and I'm working more, and I'm being seen on camera more, but I'm not speaking. And when I was doing so, this went on into 2019 up until I filmed Annabellum. I think between that first NCIS episode and Annabellum, I had filmed over 11, 12 TV shows
Oh, wow.
that I was in. It was really steady. I was very fortunate. Uh, but I knew that wasn't my end game. Now, mind you, even though I'm learning all of this about the film industry and I'm learning how sets work and I'm learning about acting, I was never a trained actor. So, hence why I never had any lines, because nobody will take you serious unless you have training. A lot of people call me up and they're like, man, get me a part. Or, I have cousins now calling me that I didn't know I had. It's a trip, bro. It's crazy. The only down to earth people that I've really been around is like my family, my close friends from high school, and the villains. But I have people out the woodwork who call me up and they're like, "Yeah, I'm your so and so's cousin, and how I get into acting, and how I, that's cool that that people are interested in that." And I try to give them whatever information I could for them to go and train and do what they want to do, because I want to see everyone win. And I when I got to Annabellum, I was informed on set that day, and it was more of a like, what are you doing? And I'm like, what do you mean what I'm doing? Like, what are you doing? Like, like, you need to go and train to be an actor. Like, I think you have something. Like, you really need to do this. And I'll never forget. I had a director tell me that, and I had one of the other actors who I just did a movie with him. His name is Caleb Naka. He's a great kid, and he's kind of guided this old dog where I needed to go into the film industry. And man, he did a great job, because he told me exactly who I needed to study with. And so after Annabellum, I started studying acting. And it's an ongoing process. And I think Annabellum, I finished filming in May. That was my last like featured role. They had us on set for 14 days. We barely in the movie, so that's the film industry.
Right.
I worked 14 days on that movie, and you see me a couple times, like real, not much, but enough. And I think it was 4 months after that I got my first major supporting role in a movie called Obsidian, and from Obsidian went to Money Plane. And Money Plane was kind of a trip to do for me, because it was the first movie that I had. Actually, I did Money Plane first. Yeah, I did Obsidian after, I think. I don't even remember the word. But I got my first trailer, man. And Andrew Lawrence of the Lawrence Brothers was the director of this movie. And they had the wrestler I wanted. I keep forgetting his name, and a couple other, Kelsey Grammer, and it was a pretty wild movie to do. But I had a really cool part where I played this Russian who like chops this guy off. So anyway, I get to set that morning, and this first time this ever happened to me. This PA comes up to me, and she's like, "Mr. Cheramie?" I'm like, "Yeah." She's like, "Let me take you to your trailer," and I'm like, "Yeah,
Excuse
I
me?
got a trailer." Whoa! So like it was a bit surreal. So I get there, and I get in the trailer, man. I'm sitting in the trailer and I'm looking around, and I had these wardrobe people coming in and like, "Look, we're gonna be with you in a little while. We're gonna be this," and they kind of disappeared, and I was by myself, dude, and I started bawling, crying.
Oh my gosh.
Like, I kind of looked around like where I was and where I came from, and I started bawling, crying, and thinking to myself, like, I'm not even supposed to be here. And even after all them years of sobriety, I learned an important lesson that day. I was I was sitting in that trail, and I wasn't feeling so deserving of what I had accomplished. And that day changed that outlook for me. It was more of a like, you know what, man, you do deserve this, and like, you worked really hard to get here. And so that was, we always growing, man. Like, I was, I think, 4.5, 5 years, almost 5 years sober, and I'm learning lessons every day, and I'm growing every day. And I shot that movie, and then that movie turned into another movie, and it's I just look, man. COVID hit the film industry hard, as it did
Oh yeah.
many other industries, and I'm super blessed that I have an oil field job who kept me afloat and still keeps me afloat to this day with benefits and great pay. Uh, but I wasn't doing what I really love to do, and that was act. And let me tell you, when September hit, I booked more than most people do in a year. I just finished four freaking projects. Four. I
Wow.
finished. I just finished a western, a period piece. I just finished a really cool independent film that I'm a lead role in. I just finished another film, and what else is four? Oh, and another film called Dear Kate, where I get to play this really cool drunk guy. I'm really good at playing a drunk guy. I got a little bit experience with it. I'm a guy who kind of like was really creepy and hitting on the lead actress, and we have like a lot of dialogue in this in a bar. So yeah, I've got casting a lot for like homeless guy, drunk guy.
Is that
But I think
difficult? Is that difficult for you? I'm sorry to interrupt. Is that difficult for you to have to, or do you think that your experience makes it easier for you to go there in that kind of a role?
Uh, that's a double edged sword, actually. So it's easy for me to get there. It's really easy for me to get there. It takes me a couple days to get back to who I am. So I had all this trauma in my life, right? And all this trauma has been dealt with. So one, that makes it difficult to relive it because I've forgiven myself and I've forgiven the people who have caused the trauma. But what I realize is that trauma is always there. It's what fuels us to be better. It's what fuels us not to go back to that life we had. So I had to find that place in me where I had that trauma stored. And it's still there, and it's always there, and I'm able to use it, and I'm able to put it back where it belongs. Uh, the trick to that is, I don't know if you've seen lately, there's a trailer floating around of this independent film I did called The Republic of Ambrose, and in there I didn't play a drug addict. I did play an alcoholic, but I didn't play any kind of drug addict, and there's not a lot of me drinking in that character, but I play a really dark character. I don't know if you ever got to see the trailer yet or
No, I
no.
haven't. I haven't. I will by the time this airs, though.
Yeah, I'm gonna shoot it to you after this. And I played a really dark individual, in other words, opposite of what Hick is in real life. I played, and it took me a couple of days to get back to me. It was a very intense character. It was a very deep rooted character, with a lot of control and narcissism and anger um, we were filming, and I had these two amazing actresses in the room when we are filming this, and the girl who was running sound, when they were so stunned at my performance that I had to end the scene myself. The director was literally like, and the camera guy was trying, he was trying to keep up, and the two girls in the room, the sound girl, she refused to go back in for a second take. It traumatized her. The two actresses came to me after. It took them about 15-20 minutes to get their bearing straight, to get back in that room and do the scene again. And they came to me. They were literally crying. They were like, we forgot we were acting. Like, they
Wow.
were scared. So yeah, when I'll send you the trailer. It was really, that took me a little while to get out of. But as far as going into a bar and playing a drinking person, I have a lot of fun with it. It never ever triggers any kind of. Um, Although I was on set a while back and they used real beer, and I believe the director knew I was a recovering alcoholic, but I want to say someone else on crew didn't, and they handed me an Abita beer, and they were like, I was like, yeah, I can't drink that. Oh, you don't have to drink it. And I'm like, but you understand? I'm playing a drunk character. Like, I got to be able to drink something. Like,
Yeah.
that's part of my process. Like, I need to have, I
Right.
have to have my process. And we ended up switching it out to like root beer or whatever. But yeah, it was a pretty fun day on set. You know, there was a little alcohol involved. The actresses and actors were getting loose, and I had a blast. I always do. Probably one of my most memorable roles with alcohol is I did a scene with Bryan Cranston,
Yeah.
and so not only like I got to do a scene with him, but I got to spend 8 hours with him, interacting, talking, and I was playing his bartender. And in this scene, it's me, Bryan Cranston across the bar from me, and there's this other actor, John, I forgot his name. He played back in the original Footloose and stuff, and it wasn't John Lithgow. It was another guy. He was a younger person at that time. He was amazing acting. God, he was brilliant to work on the side of Bryan Cranston. But I was pouring. It's coming out next month. I guess I can talk about it. It'll be on Showtime. It'll be on Showtime next month. They're gonna do sue me. I ain't got much. I was pouring him a drink, and I was pouring him a shot. And of course, it's not real alcohol, but Bryan Cranston turns to me and he says, he's like, pouring kind of heavy, huh? I say, well, I said, you are in New Orleans. We were filming in the city in New Orleans, and he's like, man, you pouring these like 3, 4 deep. I was like, well, that's how I used to drink them, and it was kind of cool because like we kind of started a conversation about my sobriety, and out of all this, whatever, I look at them just as all as brilliant actors, but society wants to call them these A-list celebrities, and they're just brilliant artists, man. When you around them, they're just passionate and brilliant about what they do. And out of all the artists that I've ever worked with, he, man, that was life changing for me. He's such a down to earth guy, and he's freaking brilliant. And if you can't act around him, then you don't need to be acting, because being around this guy, he will make anything believable, and your reaction is just as natural as can be because he's so freaking brilliant.
Wow.
And that's probably one of, and I didn't have wasn't a big speaking role or nothing, but and I've got some movies where I'm a major supporting role, and but that was the highlight of like my acting career, was working with Bryan Cranston. Man, he was absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
I freaking love the guy, and it sucks because I had such a noticeable part that I'll never get to work on that show again, and
Oh,
it sucks. I was like, oh, I just wanted to go back, but they're doing great things. It's called Your Honor. It's coming out next month on Showtime. I'm in the first episode, but yeah, that's something I'm proud of, and I kind of had to brag about. Was working with him was such a treat.
man. It's kind of like the timing of that for you in your acting career couldn't have been any better, because you've worked your way up, and now here this thing happens for you, where not only is it a chance to work with what you refer to as an A-list, but it's like an 8-hour masterclass for you in acting and
Yeah,
how to be an actor both on and off the set. And you didn't have to pay for that at all, and you were able to experience it and be a part of it, and that just has to make you feel so awesome.
it does, and you learn a lot watching these artists. I was blessed to work around Jack Houston, Eric Lange, Jenna Malone. I spent some time with on Annabelle. So you around these people who have literally, you know, um, they've literally committed their life to this craft.
Mm.
They started so much earlier in life than I have, and to watch them hone it like in front of your eyes is I mean, I'm passionate about acting. So for me, it's like, what better gift can I have to actually sit there and watch them do what they do best, what the world thinks they do best, what, they may not think they do it best, but I mean, we all know they do it best. So to get to like see that and be around that, it's pretty amazing. So yeah, man, I've been blessed with so many great opportunities, and I don't take one of them for granted. It's not an easy life to balance. It you know I thought Bearded Villains was busy. I thought Bearded Villains was what was keeping me busy, but it's never ending. You film a movie, and then trailers come out for it, and you kind of get a little busy from that. You get an interview here, or somebody wants to talk to you here, and then then it comes out, and then then it kind of fizzles out and goes away, and then you got this other project coming up, and so it's just this constant moving machine. um yeah, it's pretty wild. Last month in October and September, juggling 4 scripts was probably the hardest part of my career, because I've never had to juggle more than 2 3 scripts at a time, and I actually had to juggle like 4. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's good, but I definitely wouldn't be where I am without Bearded Villains and my sobriety,
Oh
and
man.
God, who I choose to call my higher power today.
Bro, man, it's so cool. I just feel like we've already talked for so long. We need to do like a second part of this interview, because not like part 2 later,
Yeah,
after we give you 6 or 8 months more acting under your belt, and just kind of just start interviewing you in small segments of your career as we go on. But I know you touched on it for just a second, because I know there's going to be people that ask, so I have to ask it. Anybody that's in your shoes, not necessarily in your shoes from the sobriety and your past and your recovery that way, but in your shoes as somebody who wants to get into that craft, the acting, at a middle age, frame in their life. What would you say to those guys to take those steps? Because I know there's going to be some people listening to this that think, I did something in junior high or high school, and I'd love to try to come back to that. What would you say to these guys?
I would say, like, number one, like, believe in yourself, man. Like, you are, as an individual, capable of so much more that so much more you allow yourself to be. But in all seriousness, study. Um, take acting classes, learn how to audition. In the day and age we live in, auditioning is done just like I'm speaking to you right now. I have lights, and I have, you know, obviously a different background, because a lot of things are self-tape audition, and they're so casting directors are so picky about self-tape auditions. They're picky about auditions, period. There's a lot of etiquette to auditions that people don't realize that come along with this. There's a lot of things that need to be done on your tape. So my suggestion is, find a good acting teacher. Find an acting teacher that teaches auditioning techniques, and study the craft. Um, and it's constant. Acting is like a muscle. You constantly working it out. Like you go to the gym every day. Somewhere in LA, in Los Angeles, there's this location where people like, any of these big actors, they go and they continually practice their craft. It's a constant, form of growth. So study. Once you study and you feel confident, while you study, and make sure you network. I did it a little different. I started in background. If you want to take that route, it worked for me. I went into background. I learned everything I had to about everything, and then I started studying. And then through networking, I was able to book stuff. Do I have an agent? A lot of people ask me, "Do you have an agent?" I do not have an agent.
Oh, wow.
Every Everything is done through word of mouth for me. Those 4 movies I did, these past 4 movies that I just did, there was not one of them that, I'm sorry, the Western I auditioned for, and I got the Western I went for. That was something I wanted to do. I had a period piece. It was always a dream of mine to be in a Western. I'm so glad I did. It was an amazing experience, and I would do it again in a second.
Yeah.
But the other 3, I was approached.
Oh,
So people talk and people are like, look, like he's professional, he's great to work with, he's on time. You never have to worry about him being drunk. You never have to worry about him being hungover. He knows how to treat people. He knows he's very humble. He doesn't ask for much. And it's true. I'm very humble and I'm very professional when I work. It's very important to me. That's my life. It's what I love to do. So it has a lot to do, and I'm going to get back to this, and I was going to eventually end this with this, but our walk is everything, not only as a villain, but as a human in life and the professions that we choose. It's our character. So where my character has gotten me to, you know, I've gotten parts of movies because of my character. You have two people talking. Oh, really? You haven't worked with Hick? Man, you got to work with this guy. Like, he's amazing. You got to work with him. He's really cool to work with. He's really easy. He's on point. I had a cinematographer just write something on me, and it made me feel really good because he talked about the intensity I brought, and he talked about when I needed to be on point. When I needed to be there, I was there, and there was never a question that I wasn't. So when you hear people in the industry that are professional say things like that, you got to realize that it's a lot more than you know answering an audition call. It's a lot more. Just remember, if you do get that part, or if you do get on set, act professional, be professional. You know, word of mouth is so big in this industry. You mess up, and I'm sure you see it with Hollywood. You mess up one time. So a little guy like me is nothing. You mess up one time, you're blackballed. You are done. Nobody wants to work with you. Nobody wants to touch you. So if you're gonna do this, go study, carry yourself well. Don't give up. Don't ever give up. If I would have given up, I would have never ever gotten the opportunities that I've got. And there was a lot of performances I didn't like. There was a lot of things I did that I hated. I didn't like the way I sounded because I have this messed up Cajun accent. But I soon found out that I have a really cool Southern style accent that I could change, and I could do a lot of things with my voice. So never be afraid to be who you are. And, obviously looks has nothing to do with it. People tell me about my looks and my piercing eyes and the beard and this and that. And then, look, man, I'm like Steve Buscemi ugly. Like, if I take this beard off, I'm Steve Buscemi, who is a brilliant, brilliant actor. And, he's amazing, so don't think you have to have this look, and don't think that you have to have this. Go and learn and hone the craft and execute and do your best. And I promise you, like, you will get noticed, and it takes work. It takes failing, and it takes failing, and it takes failing better next time, and it takes failing better next time, and it takes a lot of failure. But it's okay to fail, because when we fail is when we learn, and that's how we grow. So study. That's probably my big study, and be professional.
Skip, man, this has been great. This has been great talking to you. The last thing, there's so many other questions I want to talk to you about. Like I said, this is why we're going to have to do a part 2.
Okay.
And you're the first interview I've done that's going to require a part 2. So that's
They let us talk a lot.
I know. It's great. It's great. And I think this is going to be something that a lot of people are going to take away a lot of really good stuff from. But the last thing I want to ask you, and I don't know how deep this will go for you, but after all you've been through, now looking back and seeing all the different service that you do through Bearded Villains, and also outside of Bearded Villains, because I think that's also important for us to recognize that not all of the service that we do as Bearded Villains needs to be Bearded Villain related. There's a lot of service opportunities that we can have that are outside of Bearded Villains as well. But as you look back now, what can you say inspires you most?
Oh, that's a tough one. You know, I say this a lot. We live in a world where we look at so many things to inspire us. We look at athletes, and we look at actors, and we look at, maybe family members that we grew up, uncles, and this and that. And what I've learned is that, we see stories, that motivate us to inspiration. But truly, the biggest thing I think that inspires is us waking up in the morning and saying today I'm gonna be my own fucking hero. And I've gotten really far with that attitude. It's okay to be inspired by acts, because there are acts around us that inspire us. Am I ever going to be inspired by another human being? Probably not. Am I going to be inspired by their acts? Definitely so. Things that they do, their walk. Because as individuals, we just all people, man, and we just trying to get through this thing called life. Um, that I couldn't pinpoint one thing. There's millions of acts that inspire me. You inspire me. You took the initiative to get villains on this platform to share about what this brotherhood is, and as them as individuals, that's a form of inspiration to me. It shows me that you want more for this brotherhood, that you want to give this brotherhood a gift. So inspiration is all around us.
Yeah.
It's are you choosing to see every blessing? Are you really? Because it kind of just starts up when, man, I'm inspired every morning when I have the ability to
Yeah.
open my eyes. Because many mornings I shouldn't have opened my eyes. So that it starts there, and there'll be many things you see throughout the day that will inspire you. So there's no one pinpoint thing that inspires me. There's no one person that inspires me. There's millions of actions that inspire me that I see every day. One of them being a lot of the things that the villains do. I'm constantly inspired by what's being done by different chapters, and the way they go about doing things. So it's millions of things, but at the end of the day, you just gotta be your own fucking hero.
I
You
love
know,
that.
you got to be, bro. And
Love it.
I can look up to you all I want, but you aren't me, and I'm not you. We think differently. Our chemicals in our brains are differently. Our hearts are different. And it all boils down to we're very complicated humans. Each one of us on this earth. We all have this soul, and our souls are passionate about different things. So we're all inspired differently, and for me, it's just these millions of things that I see in my life that my daughter inspires me. There's things that she's doing in her life right now that inspire me. There's things my son does. There's things my partner does. There's things that members of her family does. There's things that my father has taught me resilient. He's still resilient. I get inspiration from that. So there's tons of things, but we should inspire ourselves.
Yeah.
And if you can do that, you're very capable of inspiring people around you. But try to be inspired by acts,
Yeah.
not a person, not a being.
Wow. Truth bombs right there. That's great. Oh man. And there's going to be, we're going to have brothers out there that just absolutely 100% needed to hear that. So I'm so thankful. I'm grateful that we were able to take some time out, man. I took up a bunch of your time tonight. So
Oh no,
I,
you're good, man.
I appreciate you finding some time to talk to me, man. And I'm headed out now. Just real quick, tell us where we can find you coming up on your acting. What shows you got coming up? Hit out the Internet Movie Database also to check his history out and see what he's been up
Yeah.
to. But what you got coming up, real quick? Tell everybody.
I got a director's cut of a film called The Republic of Ambrose that's coming out. Uh, it's still in post production. I'll be on Your Honor with Bryan Cranston. That is coming in December on Showtime. First episode. I also have a western called Tales of the Natchez Trace that will be coming out next year. I have Standing Tall in the Delta, which is a movie that I was really passionate about Fannie Lou Hamer, who was this black woman civil rights, uh, you know, spokesperson, and I just finished the movie about her. I play a really racist bus driver, and I'm the reason she gets turned in. It's a very true story, and I got really emotionally attached to her and her story and what she did for equality and the fight for integration and to be a first class citizen in this country. I'm very passionate about that. So I have that. It's called Standing Tall in the Delta. But you can go onto my IMDb and type in Hick Cheramie, and you can see everything that I have going on. And right now, I'm waiting on an Amazon series that I've been casted for. I'm also waiting on a TV pilot right now that I've got. Actually, director reached out to me and is interested in me doing that. So there's a lot of moving parts, and it's a lot of things. I take it day by day. First thing that comes is my oil field job, because that's what is my benefits. And you're talking about service work outside of Bearded Villains. I now sit on the committee for the foundation of my company for their charity, and we talking about millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars. So I'm just getting my feet wet with that. But you can go to my IMDb, look. Also, I mean, you guys who do have me on Instagram, a lot of you knew me as Minister Villain. Obviously, I had to change that. Yeah. So it's Hick Cheramie _actor. You can I post a lot of news and stuff on there, and then Facebook Hick Cheramie. But mostly you go on IMDb or my Instagram, and you'll see a lot of promotion there on what's going on and what's happening. It's always something different, and it's always real fast. But
Skip, I appreciate it, man. I'm honored. I'm honored to be able to take some time out to talk to you and be able to share your story. And I know it's really gonna mean something to some other people too, for sure. So thanks again for finding some time for me.
I appreciate it, man. Humbled and honored. Thank you.
All right, take care.
You too.
Wow, guys. Okay. Are you like me? Do you feel like you need to just decompress a little bit after that? That was an emotional roller coaster right there. I got teared up a couple times during that interview, and listening to him talk, man. What an amazing story. And, you know, I say that, you know, he's so inspiring. And then it's almost like a slap in the face, because he reminds us there at the end, don't be inspired by people, be inspired by acts. Be inspired by acts. And I also love what he says, be your own hero. Be your own hero. Man, I mean, this is one episode that everybody, I think, should go back and listen to a time or two. Make little notes. I know I have notes. I have specific notes time-stamped within that interview when certain things were said that I said, I want to remember that. So, oh, man, what a great interview. Thanks so much, Skip. We're going to be following your journey, absolutely. So, again, great interview. Thanks, everybody, for staying with us during that interview, because and I think everybody that did stay through that really got a lot out of it. If you are looking for an all-natural beard oil that will not only tame your beard and coarse hairs, but make your beard soft and smell amazing, check out Pulpo Beard Oils. Veteran-owned and made for today's beards, Pulpo beard products combine the best beard ingredients on the market with incredible customer service to ensure your happiness. Whether you need beard wash, beard oil, beard balm, or some fun clothing, Pulpo is the place to go. Feel fresh, feel savage, feel confident with Pulpo Beard Oils. Go to Pulpo Beard Oils, that's Pulpo beardoils.com, and use the code The Heart of a Villain for a discount on your order. All right, guys. What a great and amazing journey. Charissa says, what an amazing life and journey. Absolutely. I totally agree 100%. He has had one heck of a life already, and the best is yet to come for him, for sure. Guys, we don't have a whole lot to talk about as far as a calendar of events, which I always like to talk about, but because of COVID and everything else locking back down in many parts of the country, we really don't have many events that are scheduled. I will say this, though. I want to say this as somebody who has a spouse that works in the hospital industry. Please take this seriously. I don't care what side of the fence you are on politically, whether you're for masks or against masks, whatever it is. Please recognize that whatever this danger is that's out there with COVID is very real, and that it is affecting many people, and people are being hospitalized and people are dying from it in record numbers again in many parts of the country. So whether you believe in it or not, it is real. And just keep that in mind, please, as we go forward, and do your part to stem the tide of that, and don't try to aggravate the situation anymore just simply out of pride. But moving on to some things, I did want to mention that the First Coast Villains, our First Coast Villain brothers down in Jacksonville, they are still raising money and selling their purple patches to raise money for pancreatic cancer for the Walk for Purple Stride that they already took part in. So they're still selling patches. There's a handful of those things left, guys. So if you can please reach out, help out, and donate a little bit of money and get one of those purple patches. It goes to a great cause for pancreatic cancer awareness. Hit up the First Coast Villains for your patch and take care of that. Also want to congratulate the Bearded Villains New York Upstate chapter for their polar plunge. Last weekend, they raised $5,600. $5,600 raised at their polar plunge. And my gosh, think about this. That chapter's only 4 months old. Pretty cool stuff, guys. Congratulations, Bearded Villains Upstate New York Upstate, for your polar plunge. Guys, that's really all I have right now, because some of the stuff that was coming up on the calendar I think has been changed and or is on hold because of COVID protocols. So I wish I had better information for you on that, but I know we're coming up on Thanksgiving, so please use your brains when you talk about trying to schedule different things coming up. Just be smart about things, guys. I think that's pretty much all I have to say to that, for sure. Okay, guys, we know what that music means. That's going to wrap up episode 58, and what an amazing episode it's been. Episode 58 of The Heart of a Villain. Remember, you can still buy shirts, patches, pins, and all the good stuff at theheartofavillain.simplecast.com. Theheartofavillain.simplecast.com. Guys, I want to remind you, as I always say, be the villain that the world needs you to be. Be the villain that the world needs you to be, because the heart of a villain never stops beating. And finally, guys, please remember, it's okay not to be okay. If you are hurting, please find a brother to talk to. Remember, it's okay not to be okay. So for now, please enjoy the night. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the week ahead. Take care and stay safe.
We're all one, no borders. Don't get it twisted like contortionists in close quarters. My crew has more heads than peeps cleaning up on borders. When Blah, Jelly, and I, we come together, transformers. So when we meet up, handshakes, brews, and salutes. Every brother is different, fingerprints and attributes. One thing in common with the beard.